Danny Reed pressed his face against the observation window and watched three suns rise over the horizon of Station Harmony 7. Back home in Queensland, sunrise meant one sun and the smell of eucalyptus. Here, everything glowed purple and orange at the same time, and the air smelled like metal and something sweet he could not name. His parents had signed approximately 200 forms to let him come here. The Galactic Academy for Survival Sciences only accepted 30 students per cycle from across known space. Humans rarely got invited. Danny figured they picked him because his application essay mentioned the time he got stung by a box jellyfish and lived to write about it. Most species in the galaxy apparently thought that story was either fiction or insanity. Attention new students, please proceed to Training Hall 7. The announcement came through his translator implant, which still felt weird behind his ear. Every voice sounded slightly robotic until his brain adjusted to the technology. Danny grabbed his datapad and followed the floating directional arrows through corridors that seemed designed for beings much larger than himself. He passed a student who looked like a walking tree, another who seemed to be made entirely of crystalline structures, and something small and furry that scurried past his feet, chirping nervously. Training Hall 7 turned out to be massive, with seats arranged in a circular pattern around a central platform. Danny found a spot near the middle and sat down carefully. The chair adjusted itself to his body shape, which was helpful because most furniture on the station seemed built for species with more or fewer limbs than he had. Other students filed in slowly. Danny counted maybe 25 beings total, all different sizes and shapes. The small furry creature from the hallway took a seat 2 rows down, its enormous eyes darting around nervously. A large insectoid being settled into a reinforced seat across from Danny, its mandibles clicking softly. Next to him, an aquatic species floated in some kind of gravity-controlled water sphere. "Good morning, candidates." The voice came from the central platform where a tall reptilian being now stood. She had 4 arms, scales that shifted from green to blue depending on the light, and eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "I am Commander Rella, your primary instructor for survival sciences. You may address me as Commander or Instructor, never by my personal name." Rella walked around the platform slowly, making eye contact with each student. When her gaze landed on Danny, he saw her pupils narrow slightly. Recognition, maybe, or concern. "This academy exists for one purpose," Rella continued. "To teach you how to survive on worlds that want you dead. We focus on Class 4 and Class 5 hazard planets. Environments where the atmosphere might poison you, where the local fauna considers you food, where a single mistake means death. Not all of you will graduate. Some of you will quit. A few of you might die, though we try very hard to prevent that." The furry student made a small whimpering sound. Danny felt bad for whoever that was. They looked terrified already. "Before we begin physical training, you must understand the threats you will face." Rella gestured, and holographic images appeared above the platform. "These are the galaxy's most dangerous toxins and venoms. Pay attention. This knowledge will keep you alive." The first image showed a small creature that looked almost cute, like a lizard with wings. "The Siltstricker," Rella said. "Native to the desert moons of the Kelter system, its venom can kill most species in under 3 minutes. There is no antidote. Avoidance is your only defense." Danny studied the hologram carefully. The Siltstricker reminded him of a thorny devil lizard mixed with a scorpion. He wondered what the venom actually did at a cellular level. More holograms appeared. A plant that secreted acid strong enough to dissolve metal. A worm-like being whose bite caused neural shutdown. A floating jellyfish creature that released spores capable of liquefying internal organs. Rella described each threat in detail, explaining symptoms, survival times, and proper emergency protocols. The other students looked increasingly horrified. The aquatic being's water sphere grew cloudier with each new hologram. The insectoid's mandibles clicked faster and faster. Even the tree-like student seemed to lean away from the images. Danny took notes on his datapad, but mostly he felt confused. These things sounded dangerous, sure, but Rella described them like they were ultimate nightmare creatures. The Siltstricker venom, for example, caused respiratory failure and cellular breakdown. Nasty, but not that different from certain Australian snakes he had learned about in school. Now, Rella said, dismissing the holograms, let me be absolutely clear about something. Venom resistance is genetically impossible for most species. If you are exposed to these toxins, you will die unless you receive immediate medical intervention. Even then, survival is not guaranteed. The galaxy's most advanced medical technology can barely counter these substances. She paused, looking directly at Danny again. Some of you come from what we classify as death worlds, planets where the local evolution has created unusually hardy species. This does not make you invincible. Death world natives die from venom exposure just like everyone else. Do not let arrogance kill you. Danny nodded along with the other students, but something about Rella's words felt off. She kept glancing at him specifically, like she expected him to do something stupid, or maybe like she expected something else entirely. Tomorrow we begin practical training, Rella announced. You will learn to identify venomous species, understand their behavior patterns, and practice emergency response procedures. Get rest tonight, eat well, make peace with whatever gods or concepts you believe in. She smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Welcome to the Galactic Academy. Try not to die on your first week. The students filed out quietly, most of them looking shaken. Danny walked back to his quarters thinking about home, about the red-backed spiders in the garden shed and the brown snakes in the tall grass. About the time his little brother got stung by a bluebottle at the beach and cried for an hour but was fine by dinner. He wondered what Commander Rella would think of Earth's wildlife catalog. Probably nothing good. The biolab smelled strange, like disinfectant mixed with something alive and angry. Danny followed his classmates through the security checkpoint, where scanners verified each student's identity and biological markers. The small, furry student from yesterday introduced herself as Pip during the walkover. She came from a forest world and specialized in climbing, though she admitted everything about this academy terrified her. Everyone find a station, Commander Rella ordered. She stood near the center of the lab next to a large table covered with containment units. Each unit glowed faintly, and Danny could see movement inside several of them. The lab had 20 workstations arranged in a circle, each equipped with a holographic display and protective barriers. Danny took a spot between Pip and the insectoid student, who had introduced himself as Graunt. The aquatic student, Tessa, floated nearby in her water sphere, which apparently had its own mobility system built in. Today you will demonstrate your knowledge from yesterday's lecture, Rella began. She walked slowly around the circle, her 4 arms moving independently as she gestured. I will show you specimens. You will identify them, explain their threat level, and describe proper survival protocols. This is purely observational. No one will be exposed to any dangerous substances. Am I clear? Everyone nodded or made whatever gesture their species used for agreement. Rella activated the first hologram. A plant-like creature with translucent leaves appeared, rotating slowly. Students took turns identifying it. The tree-like student knew it immediately, explaining how its sap could cause paralysis in most carbon-based life forms. Rella seemed pleased. They went through several more examples. Danny got one right, identifying a worm creature that burrowed into hosts. He remembered the lecture because Rella had compared it to something called a Kandarian flesh borer, which sounded extremely unpleasant. Excellent work so far, Rella said after the 10th specimen. Now for something more challenging. She walked to the containment table and picked up a small unit, maybe the size of a shoebox. The glow around it seemed brighter than the others, and Danny noticed additional security locks on its surface. The Siltstricker, Rella announced, holding up the container. Inside, Danny could see the small lizard-scorpion creature from the holograms. It was even less impressive in person, maybe 6 inches long with a curved tail that ended in a visible stinger. Its scales reflected the lab lights in a pattern that probably meant something to other Siltstrickers. Several students shifted nervously. Pip made a small squeaking sound and moved slightly behind her workstation barrier. This specimen is from my personal collection, Rella continued. Captured during a research expedition 15 cycles ago, its venom remains at full potency. Remember, exposure means death for 97% of known species. The other 3% simply die slower. She placed the container on her demonstration table. Watch its movement patterns. Notice how it conserves energy, how it tracks potential threats. These behaviors tell you when a silt-stricker might strike versus when it might flee. In the field, reading these signals could save your life. The silt-stricker moved inside its container, scuttling from one corner to another. Its tail stayed raised, the stinger clearly visible. Danny thought it looked stressed, probably from being in captivity and surrounded by so many different species. Animals usually acted defensive when they felt threatened. Rella adjusted something on the container's control panel. The sides became transparent, giving everyone a better view. She started explaining silt-stricker anatomy, pointing out venom sacs and delivery mechanisms. Then the container's glow flickered. Just for a second so brief Danny almost missed it. But Rella saw it too. Her scales shifted to a darker shade and her forearms tensed simultaneously. The glow flickered again, longer this time. 3 full seconds where the containment field visibly weakened. Everyone move back, Rella said quietly, her voice tight with control. Slowly, do not run, do not make loud sounds. Too late, the containment field failed completely. The top of the container popped open with a soft hiss, and the silt-stricker shot out like it had been launched from a cannon. Chaos erupted immediately. Students screamed in at least 4 different languages. Pip dove under her workstation. Grant's mandibles opened wide in what Danny assumed was his species' version of panic. Tessa's water sphere accelerated backward so fast it nearly crashed into the wall. The silt-stricker landed on the demonstration table, its tail whipping back and forth as it assessed the situation. It was searching for an escape route, Danny realized. Just a scared animal in a room full of predators from its perspective. Rella reached for an emergency capture device on her belt, moving with careful precision. "Nobody move," she commanded. "I can recapture it if everyone remains calm." The silt-stricker's head swiveled toward Danny. It tensed, preparing to launch itself again. Danny stood perfectly still. He had dealt with aggressive animals before. You never challenged them. You never showed fear. You just let them make their choice and dealt with the consequences. The silt-stricker jumped. It covered the distance between the table and Danny's workstation in one leap, landing on his forearm before he could react. He felt the impact, felt the small claws grip his skin, felt the tail curve. Around with mechanical precision. The sting felt like someone had jabbed him with a hot needle. Sharp, burning, but not unbearable. The silt-stricker pumped venom into his arm for 3 full seconds before jumping away and scurrying under a cabinet. Complete silence filled the lab. Every student stared at Danny. Rella stood frozen, her captured device still in her hand, her scales turned completely white. Even Tessa's water sphere stopped moving. Danny looked at the injection site on his forearm. 2 small puncture marks oozed a drop of blood mixed with something yellowish. The area around the sting felt warm and slightly numb. He waited for the symptoms Rella had described. Respiratory failure, cellular breakdown, massive pain, death in under 3 minutes. 5 seconds passed, 10, 20. Danny felt fine. Actually, the burning sensation was already fading. He flexed his fingers experimentally, full range of motion, no problems. "Huh," Danny said, examining the sting marks more closely. The numbness reminded him of when he got stung by that bluebottle in primary school, annoying but temporary. Then he started laughing. He could not help it. The situation was absurd. Everyone looked so terrified, and he felt completely normal. All that buildup about the galaxy's deadliest venom, and it barely hurt more than a bee sting. "You call that venom?" Danny said, still chuckling. He looked up at Commander Rella, whose scales had somehow turned even whiter. "Seriously, that's the deadly silt-stricker. I got stung worse by a jellyfish when I was 8. Rella opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out. Her four arms hung limply at her sides as she stared at Danny like he had just sprouted wings and started singing. The emergency alarm began wailing 2 seconds later. The medical bay reminded Danny of hospitals back home, except everything was the wrong size and half the equipment looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie, which, technically, it did from his perspective. Dr. Yenna, the station's chief medical officer, had 6 thin arms and a head that reminded Danny of a praying mantis. She kept making clicking sounds while she worked, which his translator rendered as concerned muttering. "Explain to me again why you are not dead," Dr. Yenna said, passing a scanner over Danny's forearm for the 7th time. The device beeped and displayed readouts that apparently confused her. Even more. "I feel fine," Danny offered. He sat on an examination table that had adjusted itself to support his weight and body structure. Around him, 3 medical assistants monitored various screens showing his vital signs. Commander Rella stood near the door, her scales still pale, watching everything with intensity that made Danny slightly uncomfortable. "Fine," Dr. Yenna repeated slowly. "You were injected with enough siltstricker venom to kill 15 adult Grellians. You should be experiencing complete respiratory system failure. Your cells should be breaking down. Your neural pathways should be shutting off one by one." She waved a thin arm at the monitors. "Instead, your body appears to be treating the venom like a minor infection." Danny shrugged. "Maybe I got lucky." "Luck does not neutralize Class A biotoxins," Yenna snapped. She made more clicking sounds. "Your immune system is actively breaking down the venom compounds. I can see it happening in real time. Your antibodies are treating siltstricker venom like it is no more threatening than common bacteria." One of the medical assistants, a floating blob of something translucent, wobbled excitedly. "Doctor, the venom concentration in his bloodstream has dropped by 40% in the last 10 minutes. At this rate, it will be completely eliminated within the hour." Yenna turned to Rella. "What is the hazard classification of the human homeworld?" "Class 7 Death World," Rella answered quietly. "Same as the Kralix Warforged planets and the Solarian breeding grounds." "Class 7, Yenna repeated. She looked at Danny like he was a puzzle she desperately wanted to solve. "Tell me about your planet, young human. What kind of environment produces this level of biological resilience?" Danny thought about how to explain Australia to aliens. "Well, we have a lot of venomous animals, like a lot. People joke that everything in Australia wants to kill you, but it is kind of true." "Define a lot," Yenna said. We have about 20 of the world's most venomous snakes, 6 of the most deadly spiders, the most venomous fish, the most venomous octopus, the most venomous jellyfish. Some of our jellyfish can kill you in a few minutes if you do not get help. We have stinging trees that cause pain for months, crocodiles, sharks, really aggressive birds called cassowaries that can gut you with their feet." The medical bay went quiet except for the beeping of monitors. All 3 assistants stopped working and stared at Danny. Dr. Yenna's clicking sounds became faster and higher-pitched. "Your planet has multiple species capable of killing you," Yenna said slowly. "And you just live there, normally. Children grow up around these creatures." "I mean, we are careful," Danny said. "You learn what to watch out for. Check your shoes before putting them on in case there is a spider inside. Do not swim at certain beaches during jellyfish season. Stay away from snake habitats during mating season. Normal stuff." "Normal," Yenna muttered. She turned to one of her assistants. "Bring up the Earth biological database. I need to see this for myself." The assistant worked quickly, and a holographic display appeared showing various Earth animals. Danny recognized several immediately. A box jellyfish floated in the display, its tentacles trailing behind it. Next came an inland taipan, its scales perfectly rendered. Then a Sydney funnel-web spider, a blue-ringed octopus, a stonefish. Dr. Yenna made horrified clicking sounds as each creature appeared. "These all exist on one planet, in accessible environments where your species regularly encounters them." "Pretty much," Danny confirmed. "I have been stung by jellyfish 3 times, stepped on a stonefish once, which really hurt. My dad killed 5 brown snakes in our garden last year. My cousin got bit by a redback spider and just took some painkillers and went to work the next day. Commander Rella moved closer to the display, her scales shifting through colors Danny had not seen before. This database lists over 150 venomous species on Earth, and these are just the documented ones from your region. Australia is pretty bad for it, Danny admitted. But other places have their own dangerous animals. Africa has the black mamba. South America has poison dart frogs and Brazilian wandering spiders. Asia has king cobras. We kind of just deal with it. You just deal with it, Yenna repeated. She manipulated the display, bringing up detailed information on human biology. Your species evolved alongside all of these threats. Your immune systems had to develop extraordinary adaptability just to survive childhood. Danny had never thought about it that way. Growing up, venomous creatures were just part of life. You learned about them in school, learned first aid, learned when to be careful and when to stay calm. His grandfather used to catch snakes with his bare hands and relocate them away from the house. People still got hurt sometimes, but that was why you went to the hospital. This explains everything, Yenna said, mostly to herself. She pulled up more data, comparing human antibody production to other species. Humans are not immune to venom. They simply have hyperadaptive immune systems capable of responding to an enormous range of toxins, because your planet forced you to develop that adaptation or die. One of the assistants brought up a comparison chart. Human immune response times appeared next to averages from other species. The difference was dramatic. Where most species took hours or days to begin producing antibodies to new threats, humans started responding within minutes. How many humans die from venom exposure annually? Rella asked. On Earth, Danny tried to remember statistics from school. Maybe a few hundred worldwide, mostly from delayed treatment or allergic reactions. If you get to a hospital quickly, survival rates are pretty high for most bites and stings. The medical staff exchanged looks that Danny could not interpret. Even with the translator, some expressions did not convert properly across species. A few hundred, Yenna said quietly. Out of how many humans total? About 8 billion. More silence. Yenna's clicking sound stopped completely. Your species numbers 8 billion individuals, she finally said. Living on a Class 7 death world, surrounded by hundreds of venomous species, and only a few hundred die per year from venom exposure. Is that weird? Danny asked. Weird, Rella made a sound that might have been a laugh. The Grellian homeworld has exactly 3 venomous species. 3. It is classified as Class 2 habitable. They still lose thousands per year to venom deaths. Your planet should be uninhabitable for any species without technological support, yet humans thrive there with no special equipment. Dr. Yenna turned back to her monitors, studying Danny's vital signs again. The venom is completely gone from your system now. No lasting damage, no side effects. You metabolized a lethal dose of siltstricker venom in under an hour like it was nothing. So I can go back to class? Danny asked hopefully. Absolutely not, Yenna and Rella said simultaneously. Rella stepped forward, all 4 arms crossed in a gesture Danny assumed. Meant she was thinking hard about something. Danny Reed, I need to ask you something. Would you be willing to participate in some additional testing? Nothing dangerous, just exposure to various substances under controlled conditions. I want to understand human limits. Why? Danny asked. Because if one human can survive siltstricker venom, I need to know what else humans can survive, Rella said. This academy trains students to operate on deadly worlds. If I understand human capabilities better, I can develop better training protocols for everyone. Danny thought about it. More tests sounded boring, but if it helped other students stay safe, it seemed worth doing. Plus, it might be interesting to see what else the galaxy considered deadly. Okay, he agreed, as long as it does not hurt too much. Rella's scales shifted to a lighter color. Relief, maybe. Nothing will hurt more than that siltstricker sting, I promise you. Then we should be fine, Danny said. That barely hurt at all. Dr. Yenna made clicking sounds that his translator rendered as distressed laughter. Danny became something of a celebrity over the next 3 days, though he found the attention uncomfortable. Students whispered when he walked past in the corridors. Some approached him with questions. A few stayed far away like he was dangerous. He heard someone call him the Death Worlder in what might have been an awed or frightened tone. Meanwhile, Commander Rella set up a proper testing schedule with Dr. Yenna. Every morning before regular classes, Danny reported to the medical bay for what they called exposure trials. The first test involved something called frostburn toxin. This substance causes cellular crystallization in most species, Dr. Yenna explained, preparing a tiny amount in a specialized injector. Even trace exposure requires immediate treatment. We are using 1/10 the normal test dose. She injected it into Danny's forearm, the same one the silt-stricker had stung. Medical monitors tracked his vital signs while Yenna and 3 assistants watched nervously. Danny felt a tingling sensation spread from the injection site, like pins and needles when your foot falls asleep. It was mildly uncomfortable, but faded after about 10 minutes. The monitors showed brief inflammation followed by rapid recovery. Tingling, Danny reported, like when you sit on your leg too long and it gets numb. Dr. Yenna made her concerned clicking sounds. He described lethal cellular crystallization as tingling. Note that in the log. The second test happened 2 days later. A creature called a meltspitter produced acidic spray that could dissolve organic matter. Rella brought in a heavily secured container with a juvenile specimen. They set up protective barriers and emergency neutralization systems before letting it spray a controlled amount at Danny's hand. The acid hit his skin and Danny yelped in surprise. It burned worse than the silt-stricker's sting, similar to touching a hot pan. His skin turned bright red and felt like it was on fire for about 30 seconds. Then the burning faded to a dull ache. By the time Dr. Yenna finished scanning him, the redness had already started disappearing. That one actually hurt, Danny admitted, looking at his hand. The skin looked slightly irritated but basically normal, like a bad sunburn. A bad sunburn? Rella repeated. She was writing everything down on a datapad. Her scales, cycling through colors Danny had learned, meant she was fascinated and disturbed at the same time. Meltspitter acid dissolves flesh in seconds. He compared it to sun exposure. The third test involved a Mindshitter worm, a small parasite that injected neurotoxins. This one worried Danny more because it supposedly caused hallucinations and cognitive problems. But Dr. Yenna assured him they were using an incredibly diluted sample. The injection made Danny's head hurt almost immediately. Not terrible pain, more like a pressure headache combined with the weird feeling you get before a migraine. He had trouble focusing on Yenna's questions for about 20 minutes. Then he got incredibly tired and fell asleep right there on the examination table. He woke up 3 hours later feeling completely normal. Yenna looked exhausted, having monitored him the entire time. Apparently his brain activity had shown some unusual patterns during sleep, but his neural pathways had systematically neutralized the toxin without any permanent effects. "I just needed a nap," Danny said, stretching. "That happens sometimes when I get headaches." Rella put her datapad down and rubbed her face with 2 of her 4 hands. "Of course it does." Word of the tests spread through the academy despite Dr. Yenna's attempts at confidentiality. During regular training sessions, other students started asking Danny questions. Not just about the tests, but about Earth in general. Pip approached him during a break in physical conditioning. "Is it true your planet has flying creatures that drink blood?" "Mosquitoes," Danny said. "I mean, yeah, they are annoying but mostly harmless unless they carry diseases." "Flying blood drinkers are annoying but harmless," Pip repeated slowly. Her enormous eyes blinked several times. "My planet has one predator species we consider extremely dangerous. One, it is about this big." She held her small hands about 2 feet apart. "Everyone on my world learns to avoid them from childhood. We lose maybe 10 people per year to attacks." Danny thought about Australian predators. We have saltwater crocodiles that can grow over 20 feet long. They kill a few people most years. But we also have sharks, venomous snakes, venomous spiders, venomous jellyfish, drop bears that are basically myths, but tourists believe them anyway, and magpies that swoop people during nesting season. Pip stared at him. How does anyone survive on your planet? You just pay attention, Danny said with a shrug. Learn the rules. Do not swim in water where crocodiles live. Do not reach into dark spaces without checking for spiders. Wear protective clothing when hiking. It is not that hard once you learn what to watch for. Grant, the large insectoid student, joined their conversation. His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Commander Rella has changed our training protocols since your tests began. She now uses you as a benchmark for what she calls extreme survival. What does that mean? Danny asked. It means, a new voice said, that if a 16-year-old human can survive these threats, then the rest of you need to stop making excuses. Commander Rella stood behind them, all four arms crossed. Her scales showed a pattern Danny had learned meant she was in teaching mode. Danny represents something important, Rella continued, addressing the small group that had gathered around them. Not because he is invincible, he is not, but because his species learned to coexist with extreme danger through knowledge and adaptation rather than avoidance. That is what I am trying to teach all of you. She gestured for everyone to gather closer. Most species in the galaxy evolve on relatively safe worlds. When they encounter serious threats, their response is fear and avoidance, perfectly reasonable, but it means you are unprepared when avoidance fails. Humans evolved differently. They had to learn about threats, understand them, respect them without letting fear paralyze them. Tessa, the aquatic student, floated forward in her water sphere. Are you saying we should be more like humans? No, Rella said firmly. I am saying you should learn from human methodology. You do not need death world biology to apply death world thinking. Understand threats, practice responses, stay calm under pressure. These are learned skills, not genetic traits. Danny felt weird being used as an example. He had never thought of himself as special. Growing up in rural Australia, dealing with dangerous animals was just normal life. Everyone he knew had similar experiences and stories. Over the following weeks, something shifted in how the other students treated Danny. The fear faded, replaced by curiosity and respect. Pip started asking him about Earth wildlife during meals, fascinated by the descriptions. Grant wanted to know about human problem-solving approaches. Even the more distant students began warming up to him. One evening, Danny found Pip sitting alone in the common area, looking at her data pad with a worried expression. He sat down nearby. You okay? Nervous about next week's practical exam, Pip admitted. We have to navigate a simulated hazard environment. I keep thinking about all the ways I could fail. What specifically worries you? Danny asked. Everything, Pip said miserably. The venom, the environmental hazards, making a mistake and getting hurt or getting my team hurt. Danny thought about how his dad had taught him to handle dangerous situations. My grandfather used to catch snakes that got into people's houses. He taught my dad and my dad taught me. You know what he always said? Fear is healthy. Fear keeps you alert. It is panic that kills you. Pip's ears twitched. What is the difference? Fear makes you careful. Panic makes you stupid, Danny explained. When you see something dangerous, fear tells you to be cautious. That is good. Panic tells you to run blindly or freeze up. That is bad. The trick is feeling the fear, accepting it, then using it to make better decisions instead of worse ones. How do you do that? Practice mostly, Danny said honestly. Every time you face something scary and handle it okay, it gets a little easier. Not because the danger goes away, but because you learn to trust yourself. Pip looked at him thoughtfully. Is that how you stayed calm when the siltstricker stung you? Kind of, Danny said. I have been hurt before by animals. It is scary but survivable. Running away would have just made things worse, so I stayed still and dealt with it. Even though you thought you might die. Danny paused. He had not really thought he would die, but he probably should have based on what everyone said about silt-stricker Venom. I guess I trusted that someone would help if things went bad. Commander Rella was right there. Dr. Yenna was probably monitoring. I was not alone. We are not alone, Pip repeated softly. I forget that sometimes. Danny smiled. Your team will have your back during the exam, and you will have theirs. The transport ship descended through thick clouds toward the moon's surface. Danny pressed against the viewport, watching jungle canopy appear below them. The moon orbited a gas giant that dominated half the sky, its swirling storms visible even through the atmosphere. The whole scene looked alien and beautiful and slightly terrifying. Final exam parameters, Commander Rella announced over the ship's communication system. Her voice reached all 30 students simultaneously. You will survive for 3 days in assigned teams of 3. Each zone presents different challenges. Emergency extraction is available if needed, but using it means automatic failure. Your performance will determine your final academy ranking. Danny glanced at his teammates. Pip sat across from him, her small frame strapped into a safety harness, her enormous eyes reflecting worry and determination. Tessa floated nearby in her water sphere, which had been modified with additional life support and mobility systems for the field environment. They had drawn Zone 7, described as humid jungle with toxic plant life and aggressive fauna. Danny thought it sounded a bit like Queensland during wet season, except probably more dangerous. Probably. The ship landed at their designated drop point. The rear ramp lowered, and Danny got his first breath of the moon's air. Warm, humid, smelling like rotting vegetation, and something sweet he could not identify. His environmental suit filtered potential toxins, but allowed enough natural atmosphere through that he could sense the environment properly. Team 7, you are cleared for deployment, Rella's voice said. Good luck. They disembarked carrying basic survival gear. Water purification tablets, emergency beacons, medical supplies, basic tools, and food rations for 4 days. The ramp closed behind them and the ship lifted off, leaving them alone in the jungle. Silence settled over them. Not complete silence, Danny realized. Sounds filtered through the dense vegetation, clicking noises, something that might have been birdsong if birds existed here, rustling in the undergrowth that suggested movement. We should establish camp before dark, Danny said, checking his datapad's map. They had 8 hours until sunset according to local day-night cycles. Find somewhere defensible with access to water. You sound like you have done this before, Tessa observed. Her water sphere bobbed as she spoke, the translation coming through clearly despite her aquatic vocal cords. Camping in the bush with my dad, Danny admitted. Same principles apply: shelter, water, security. They moved through the jungle carefully, Danny taking point because he had the most experience with dense vegetation. Pip climbed trees occasionally to scout ahead, her natural abilities making her incredibly fast and agile in the canopy. Tessa floated at mid-level, her sphere's sensors detecting things the others might miss. The plant life was bizarre, trees with bark that oozed purple sap, vines covered in hair-like structures that waved despite the lack of wind, flowers that smelled sickeningly sweet and probably lured prey. Danny made mental notes about what to avoid touching. They found a good campsite near a small stream. The water tested clean after purification. A cluster of large rocks provided natural shelter and a defensible position. Danny taught Pip and Tessa how to build a basic perimeter using local materials, creating barriers that would alert them to approaching creatures without being obvious traps. Where did you learn this? Pip asked, weaving flexible vines between stakes Danny had carved from straight branches. Grandfather, Danny said. He was in the army before becoming a snake catcher. Said the best defense is knowing when something is coming before it knows you have noticed it. That first night passed quietly. They took turns on watch, which meant Danny and Pip did most of the watching since Tessa needed to maintain her water sphere systems. Strange creatures moved through the jungle around them. Danny heard things that sounded. Large saw eyes reflecting their small fire, noted tracks near the stream at dawn. Nothing attacked. Everything seemed curious but cautious, which Danny took as a good sign. Predators usually acted confident. These creatures acted like they were evaluating whether the humans were threats or prey. Day 2 brought their first real challenge. They were following the stream toward a landmark Rella had marked as their primary objective when Tessa suddenly made a distressed sound. Her water sphere wobbled irregularly, and Danny saw something moving inside the water with her. "Something stung me," Tessa said, her voice tight with pain. "On my dorsal fin." Danny and Pip rushed over. Through the sphere's transparent surface, Danny could see a small welt on Tessa's fin, and the tissue around it was turning an alarming gray color. "What stung you?" Pip asked frantically. "I don't know," Tessa said. "Something in the water. It was small, fast. Danny, it feels like fire spreading through my whole body." Danny accessed his datapad quickly, searching through the zone's documented species. He found it, a small aquatic creature called a needle skimmer. Venomous. Causes rapid tissue necrosis in most species. Can be fatal if untreated. His mind raced. The venom caused tissue damage by overwhelming the victim's cellular repair systems. Most species could not fight it fast enough, but humans could produce antibodies quickly, very quickly, and his blood had already dealt with multiple alien toxins during the tests. "I have an idea," Danny said, "but it is risky and weird." "What idea?" Tessa's voice was getting weaker. The gray discoloration was spreading faster. "My blood," Danny said. "I have antibodies from all those venom tests. Maybe they can help your immune system fight the toxin." "That is insane," Pip whispered. "It is also our best option," Tessa said. "Emergency extraction will take at least an hour. I do not think I have an hour." Danny pulled out the medical kit and found a sterile needle. "Pip, help me set this up. We need to do a direct transfusion." It was crude and probably violated multiple medical protocols, but they managed it. Danny used the needle to draw blood from his arm, then carefully injected it into Tessa's circulatory system through a port in her water sphere designed for medication delivery. Not much, maybe 30 milliliters, enough to introduce his antibodies without overwhelming her system. They waited. Tessa floated very still, her breathing shallow. The gray discoloration continued spreading for another minute. Then it slowed. Then it stopped. Gradually, very gradually, normal color began returning to her tissue. 10 minutes later, Tessa took a deeper breath. "The pain is fading. I can feel my body fighting back now. Whatever you gave me is working." Danny sagged with relief. Pip made happy chirping sounds. They waited another hour before moving, making sure Tessa was stable. She recovered almost completely, left only with a small scar where the sting had occurred. "You saved my life," Tessa said quietly. "With your blood, because your body can fight toxins that kill the rest of us." "We are a team," Danny said simply. "That is what teams do." They reached their objective that evening, a specific rock formation Rella had designated as their checkpoint. They activated their beacon to log their progress, then made camp nearby. The third day would be the return journey. That night, something large moved through the jungle nearby. Danny heard it long before he saw it. Heavy footfalls, snapping branches, the kind of sounds that meant serious mass. He woke Pip and gestured for silence. The creature emerged from the undergrowth about 50 meters away. In the moonlight reflecting off the gas giant above, Danny could see it clearly. Massive, easily 3 times his height. Reptilian, covered in armored scales. A long tail that ended in spikes. The mouth showed rows of teeth designed for tearing. And running down its spine, Danny could see the telltale structures that usually meant venom delivery systems in dangerous creatures. The zone's apex predator. The one Rella had warned them about, highly territorial, extremely aggressive, venomous bite that caused complete paralysis. The creature was looking directly at their camp, testing the air with a long tongue, deciding if they were food or threat. Danny's mind worked quickly. They could not outrun it, could not fight it effectively. Emergency extraction would take too long. They needed a different approach. Stay very still, Danny whispered. Do not run, do not attack, just watch. The creature took a step closer. Its eyes reflected orange in the firelight. Danny recognized that look from watching crocodiles back home. It was curious but not committed to attack, still evaluating. Danny slowly stood up, making himself look as large as possible without making aggressive movements. He kept his eyes on the creature but did not stare directly at it, which many predators interpreted as challenge. He started making deep, rhythmic sounds with his voice, not words, just steady noise that suggested confidence and size. The creature paused, its head tilted slightly. Danny could almost see it thinking, reassessing. This small thing was not running, was not showing fear, was making itself seem larger, maybe not easy prey after all. Danny picked up a stick and banged it against the rocks, creating loud sounds. The creature flinched slightly, still watching but less certain now. Danny made more noise, staying large, staying confident without being aggressive. After what felt like forever, the creature made a huffing sound. It turned slowly, keeping one eye on Danny, and walked back into the jungle, not fleeing, just deciding there was easier prey elsewhere. Danny waited until he could no longer hear it before sitting down. His hands shook with adrenaline. Pip was staring at him with her mouth open. Tessa's water sphere bobbed erratically. "What did you just do?" Pip asked. "Made it think we were more trouble than we were worth," Danny said. "Predators usually go for easy meals. If you make them work for it, they often decide it is not worth the effort." The transport ship's interior felt safe and comfortable compared to 3 days in the jungle. Danny sat with his team, all of them exhausted but alive. Through the viewport, he watched the moon shrink as they climbed back toward Station Harmony 7. The gas giant dominated the view, its storms still churning in patterns that never repeated. Other teams had already returned to the station. Team 7 was the last one back, having taken the full 3 days to complete their objectives. Danny worried briefly that being last meant they had failed somehow. Commander Rella met them at the docking bay. Her scales showed colors Danny had learned meant she was experiencing multiple strong emotions at once. Pride, concern, satisfaction, something else he could not identify. "Medical bay, all of you," Rella ordered. "Standard post-mission evaluation." Dr. Yenna examined each of them thoroughly. Tessa's sting site had healed completely, leaving only a small scar that Yenna found fascinating. She took samples of Tessa's blood and spent 30 minutes comparing it to the samples from Danny's. "Transfusion. Remarkable," Yenna kept muttering. "His antibodies integrated with her immune system and taught it to fight the toxin. I have never seen cross-species antibody transfer work this effectively." "Is that unusual?" Danny asked. "Unusual?" Yenna's clicking sounds conveyed disbelief. "It should be impossible. Your biology and Tessa's biology are completely different. Different cellular structures, different evolutionary paths, different base chemistries, yet somehow your immune system produced antibodies general enough and adaptive enough to function in her body." "Earth made us adaptable," Danny said, remembering Rella's earlier words. "We had to be." After medical clearance, Rella assembled all the students in the main training hall, the same place where Danny had first heard her lecture about venoms and toxins. That felt like years ago instead of weeks. "Congratulations," Rella began. "All teams survived the practical exam. Some needed emergency extraction. Some completed only partial objectives, but everyone demonstrated the basic survival skills we have been teaching." She paced around the central platform, her 4 arms gesturing as she spoke. "However, one team stands out. Team 7, consisting of Pip, Tessa, and Danny Reed, completed all primary and secondary objectives. They survived 3 full days without requesting extraction or assistance. They overcame multiple serious challenges through teamwork and creative problem-solving." Danny felt embarrassed as other students turned to look at their team. Pip's fur fluffed with pride. Tessa's water sphere bobbed happily. "More importantly," Rella continued, "they demonstrated something I have been trying to teach all of you. They faced deadly threats without panic. When Tessa was stung by a needle skimmer, a creature whose venom kills most species, they did not call for extraction. They solved the problem themselves using available resources. Rella pulled up holographic footage from the mission. Danny saw himself drawing blood, saw the crude transfusion setup, saw Tessa recovering. He had not realized they were being monitored so closely. Danny used his own blood to save his teammate, Rella said quietly. He gambled that his death world immune system could help her body fight toxins it could not handle alone. That gamble paid off. But more importantly, he did not hesitate. He assessed the situation, identified a solution, and acted. She dismissed the hologram and looked at the assembled students. That is what I wanted you to learn, not fearlessness, not invincibility, but the ability to think clearly under pressure, to use knowledge and creativity instead of just instinct, to work together despite differences. Grant raised one of his limbs. Commander, you have been emphasizing human survival methodology since Danny arrived. Are you saying we should all try to be more like humans? Rella made a sound that might have been a laugh. Absolutely not. You cannot become human. You do not have their biology or their evolutionary history, but you can learn from their approach. She gestured at Danny. Humans are not special because they are immune to danger. They are remarkable because their planet forced them to develop versatility. She activated her datapad and a new display appeared. Comparative data showing different species and their homeworld classifications. Most species evolve on Class 1 or Class 2 worlds. Safe, comfortable, few serious threats. When those species encounter danger, their instinct is fear and avoidance, reasonable responses but limiting. The display shifted to show Earth's classification. Class 7, Death World. Next to it appeared survival statistics that made several students gasp. Humans evolved on a planet with thousands of potentially lethal species, Rella continued. Venomous creatures, large predators, hostile weather, dangerous plants. They had two choices: develop technology to isolate themselves from threats or learn to coexist with danger through knowledge and adaptation. They chose both. She looked at Danny specifically. Humans still die from animal attacks on their homeworld. They still get poisoned by toxic substances. They still face predators that see them as food. But they reduced those deaths through education, not isolation. They taught their young to identify threats, understand behavior patterns, and respond appropriately. That methodology is what I want you to learn. Pip raised a small paw. But Commander, we are not from death worlds. We do not have human resilience. You have brains, Rella said firmly. You have the ability to learn and adapt. Danny survived the Siltstricker sting because his biology handles toxins better than most. But he scared off the apex predator through knowledge and behavior modification. No special biology required, just understanding of predator psychology and the confidence to apply that knowledge under pressure. She walked around the platform slowly. Some of you will graduate from this academy and work on hazardous worlds. Some will join exploration teams. Some will become survival instructors yourselves. Whatever you do, you will face situations where fear is appropriate but panic is fatal, where your first instinct might be to freeze or flee, but the correct action is to think and adapt. Rella stopped walking and faced the group directly. Danny is not a better survivor than any of you because he is human. He is a good survivor because he respects danger without letting fear control him, because he trusts his knowledge and training, because he works with his team instead of trying to handle everything alone. Those are learned skills available to any species. Dr. Yenna entered the hall and approached Rella, handing her a datapad. Rella read it quickly, her scales shifting through several colors. Final exam scores are posted, Rella announced. Team 7 achieved the highest marks in Academy history. Pip, Tessa, and Danny, you should be proud. The hall erupted in applause and various alien sounds of approval. Danny felt his face get hot with embarrassment. Pip chirped excitedly. Tessa's sphere bobbed so enthusiastically it nearly bumped into other students. After the ceremony ended and other students filed out, Rella approached Team 7 privately. Her scales showed that soft blue color Danny associated with her being genuinely pleased. "You three surprised me," Rella admitted. "I paired you together because I wanted Danny to work with species very different from himself. I thought it would be challenging. Instead, you became the most cohesive team in the class." "Danny taught us about death world thinking," Pip said. "Fear is healthy, panic is deadly, work together, trust your knowledge." "And you both taught me about different perspectives," Danny added. "Pip sees things I miss. Tessa's sensors detect stuff my eyes cannot. We made a good team because we were different, not despite it." Rella nodded slowly. "That is the real lesson. Diversity is strength when you learn to communicate and cooperate. The galaxy will need more teams like yours, different species with different abilities working together to solve problems." She pulled up a file on her datapad. "I am writing a paper about human survival methodology. With your permission, I would like to include data from your mission and Danny's Venom resistance tests." "What will you do with the paper?" Danny asked. "Distribute it to other survival academies across the galaxy," Rella said. "Share what I learned about adaptive thinking and cross-species cooperation. Maybe inspire other instructors to update their teaching methods." "Okay," Danny agreed, "if it helps other students learn to survive better." Rella's scales brightened. "Thank you, all of you." She paused, then added quietly, "When that siltstricker stung you on the first day, Danny, I thought I had killed you. The containment failure was deliberate. I wanted to test human venom resistance under controlled conditions. But I used a lethal dose because I believed human resilience was exaggerated in the reports. I could have been wrong. You could have died." Danny thought about that. He probably should be angry. But Rella had been testing him within what she believed were safe parameters based on available information. Her data was just wrong. "You did not know humans could handle that venom," Danny said. "Now you do. Now other instructors will know too. That knowledge might save lives, seems worth it." Rella looked at him for a long moment. "You are very forgiving for someone who nearly died for science." "I did not nearly die," Danny pointed out. "It barely hurt. Besides, if my being here helps other students learn better survival skills, then getting stung by that siltstricker was worth it." Later that evening, Danny sat in his quarters and recorded a message to send home. His family would receive it in a few days after the signal traveled across the galaxy. His little brother would want to hear about the jungle moon. His sister would ask questions about the other students. His parents would worry and be proud at the same time. "Hey, family," Danny said to the recording device. "I finished my first term at the academy, got top marks on the final exam. Turns out growing up in Queensland prepared me pretty well for alien planets. Who knew dodging brown snakes and checking for spiders would be useful in space?" He paused, thinking about everything that had happened. The siltstricker sting, the venom tests, saving Tessa, facing the apex predator, making friends with beings from completely different worlds. "I learned something important here," Danny continued. "Earth seems like a normal place when you grow up there. You do not realize how extreme it is compared to most planets. But that extremity made humans really good at adapting and surviving. We learned to live with danger instead of hiding from it. That is kind of special, I guess. Miss you all. Tell Mum the food here is weird but edible. Tell Dad I remembered his lessons about staying calm around predators. They worked on alien creatures too. See you in 6 months." Danny ended the recording and cued it for transmission. Through his window, he could see other parts of Station Harmony 7, with ships coming and going, with thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds all working and learning together. Earth was still a Class 7 death world. Humans were still unusual in the galaxy for thriving there, but Danny understood now that surviving Earth had given his species something valuable. Not immunity to danger, but the ability to face danger with knowledge and confidence, to learn from every threat, to adapt to every challenge. He smiled, remembering Commander Rella's frozen expression when he laughed about the siltstricker venom. That felt like it had happened to a different person. He had changed here, learned about himself, about humans, about the galaxy. Tomorrow classes would resume. More lessons on survival, more training exercises, more opportunities to learn and grow. Danny looked forward to it all. After all, if he could handle Queensland, he could handle anything the galaxy threw at him.